Shalom Aleichem, friends, and welcome back to this week's Biselleh Torah. This Shabbat has a very special name. It is called Shabbat Gadol, the Great, perhaps the greatest Shabbat. It is called the Great Shabbat or Shabbat Gadol because it brings to a close the year. And on Motzei Shabbat, on Saturday evening that is, when we celebrate Passover, this begins a whole new chapter of the year and of our lives. The liberation, of course, occurred millennia ago when the Israelite nation was freed from the clutches of the evil Pharaoh, and which is why we celebrate Passover. But there's another kind of liberation that we also celebrate as the year draws to a close, the year of enslavement and the year of, God willing, a new kind of freedom for us. There is a special haftarah, prophetic portion that is read on this Shabbat from the prophet Malachi. And in the last chapter of this prophet, he says, I'm going to be sending Malachi, my sacred messenger, to deliver a message to you that I need you to listen very carefully to because it may be the most important message that you ever hear in your life. And it winds down so that in the very last couple of sentences of Malachi, he finally comes out and says the following, Hinei ani sholech Eliyahu Hanavi, I am about to dispatch my servant, my holy messenger, Elijah the prophet. And he's going to deliver a message to you that you need to listen to and hear very clearly, very carefully. Hinei ani sholech Eliyahu Hanavi veheshiv leiv avot el banim. And he is going to ensure that the heart of the parents are turned back to the children. V'leibanim, and the leiv of the heart of the children returned back to the parents. Such a great thing will happen on this, the very last Shabbat of the year, if we're listening attentively to the lesson that God wants to impart to us. Elsewhere in this Torah reading, for this Shabbat, we also find the missives, the indication, the mitzvah of making sure that the fire never went out in the Beit HaMikdash, that the flames were continually burning in the sacred temple that was ultimately to be housed in Jerusalem, the flames that would light the menorah, the flames that would ignite each korban, each sacrifice that was brought by a petitioner that came to Jerusalem, the fires that were never to be diminished in size, but to constantly be fed and to feed the people Israel as they came to this holy spot. There is a story that is told by Shlomo Carlebach of blessed memory of the very last Shabbat that was observed in the Warsaw Ghetto, the very last Passover in 1943, in the very last bunker, with the last child and the last parent observing the Passover Seder. And it comes time for the child to ask the fair kashas, the 4 questions, and he turns to his father and recites them diligently, but those really aren't the questions that the child wants to ask. What's really deeply in his heart is this all there is, Papa? Is this all that it was destined to be? And finally, as he recites the 4 questions and the father goes by the book and begins to answer the traditional response that is found in the Haggadah, Avadim Hayinu. Yes, our ancestors were slaves in Egypt long ago. The child bursts out with the question that is really in his heart of hearts. Tata, he says, Daddy, are you going to be alive next year? Am I going to be here next year? And weeping, his father looks directly into the eyes of his son. He says, Moshe, I don't know if I will be alive, and I do not know if you will be alive. But I do know that somewhere in the world there will be another Moshe that will be able to ask the 4 questions, and the next year and the next. Luich ben Niroli Alamba Ed says our sacred text, because the fire shall never go out. The fire shall always be burning. On this Shabbat HaGadol, on this sacred last Shabbat of the year, perhaps this will be our opportunity for the ultimate redemption, our ultimate liberation from ourself, from all of the grudges that we're holding. And the only place they are being held is in our own head. And when we can finally do what the prophet Malachi tells us to do, to release ourselves, to allow the hearts of one family to be bound into the hearts of that same family and then expanded all around, then we will witness the fire that shall never go out, the fire that shall eternally burn. And perhaps, when all is said and done, Elijah the prophet will be standing at our Passover Seder, lifting up the 5th cup of wine and toasting us, saying, "You are now free."